All right, this is a line of Ukrainians outside makeshift bomb shelters waiting for food. It's just one example of the humanitarian crisis that exists now, and the Russians don't mind this. Putin is essentially starving out besieged Ukrainian cities. If they don't surrender, he will starve them to death and shell his entire cities, these cities, into rubble. With that, we bring on Dmitry Alperovitch, Silverado Policy Accelerator Chairman, cybersecurity expert, and former advisor to the U.S. Department of Defense. Are we at the point where we are to believe that there's a lot of Ukrainians who would rather starve to death than face rule under Vladimir Putin?
Well, there's no question about it. If you look at what's going on in Mariupol, it's not just tragic, it's barbaric, because for 4 days now, the Russians have prevented humanitarian convoys from getting into the city. The Ukrainians have been trying to send food, send medicine, send water into those cities. The Russians have stopped it, but the defenders are still fighting the Russians. They're not letting the Russians in. And I think the Russians are trying to make an example out of Mariupol so that they would show to Zelensky what Kyiv would look like once they actually manage to surround it.
You say once. You think the surrounding and besieging of Kyiv is a foregone conclusion?
Well, that's what the Russians are clearly trying to get to. That's why you're seeing all these fights to the west of the city, to the east of the city now as well. But look, I think there's still a possibility that there will be a ceasefire here between Zelensky and Putin, perhaps in the coming weeks. You're seeing very hopeful statements from Zelensky, even one tonight, saying that they're making a lot of progress in the negotiations with Russia. He's now saying that he doesn't think that Ukraine will ever join NATO, that NATO doesn't want Ukraine. So that's, of course, was one of the big sticking points that Vladimir Putin demanded, this neutrality for Ukraine. If Zelensky is willing to concede on that, you might have a path towards a ceasefire here.
Flip this around, obviously, because you point out rightly, Zelensky is watching these pictures and being what's done to his country. He may in a way win but lose because he doesn't have a country for his people to inhabit, considering all the damage. But from the Russian perspective, you're talking about 10,000 casualties. They just lost another general. This makes 4 flag officers who've been killed in the invasion. Is there any pressure growing on Vladimir Putin for a ceasefire?
I don't think just yet. Remember, a lot of this news is not coming back into Russia. If you watch the propaganda on Russian television, you will see mostly videos from the Ministry of Defense showing their victories and how they're decimating Ukrainian forces with very precision-guided strikes. Of course, they're doing very few precision-guided strikes actually in Ukraine. They're pulverizing those cities. But the Russian population just is not seeing any of that. So I think he can continue this for quite some time. Obviously, if the casualties start mounting into the tens of thousands, that's going to be really difficult to fight.
We keep hearing about all these casualties. Why aren't we seeing 10,000 people is a lot of people. We're seeing bombed out Russian equipment. This actually is American equipment captured by the Russians from the Ukrainians in this picture. But we've not seen all of these dead Russians that you'd think the Ukrainians would be putting all over social media to warn Russian soldiers coming in as replacements. This is what's coming for you.
Well, I've been seeing some of them. Of course, these are very graphic pictures, so people are trying to be respectful of the bodies and not parade them out publicly. So you understand that, and it's actually a war crime to do that sort of thing. So it's understandable that the Ukrainians are more reserved about it. But you have funerals now happening all over Russia as the bodies are coming back, and that's not something that he's going to be able to hide for a long time.
What do you make of the pleas tomorrow from Zelensky? Is he... he's going to ask for a no-fly zone. He's going to ask for all this stuff. Kelly Meyer just reported from D.C. that the U.S. is going to give about $800 million in security aid, weapon systems, obviously not a no-fly zone, and not all the weapons the Ukrainian wants. Who is Zelensky really talking to, and what do we need to listen for in Zelensky's speech tomorrow?
I think he's going to talk mostly about the need to support the Ukrainian people from a moral perspective, to support them in this fight against the Russians with more sanctions. He's going to really press to ramp up the sanctions against the Russian economy. He's going to press for pressure on the corporations that are still in Russia, operating in Russia. He wants those corporations out. And he's going to demand some action from the West to make sure that Putin pays an even higher price than he already has for this invasion.
NBC is now reporting that the Biden administration is thinking about providing Ukraine with Switchblade drones. These are the loiter and wait kamikaze munitions. They take off and then they they fly around for a little while, and you can direct them to go blow up a Russian tank or a command center and the like. How much solace or security is Vladimir Putin and his inner circle taking in the constant drumbeat from the administration that they do not want to do anything? And this is the words both of the press secretary and of the Pentagon spokesperson and the spokesperson over at State. We don't want to do anything provocative.
No, look, I think they are appreciating that. They also do not want a war with NATO. But obviously, they don't like these weapon supplies, but they can't do anything about that. And those Switchblade drones are going to be very helpful to the Ukrainians. They're using TB2 drones from Turkey very effectively to target Russian armor. And these new drones, kamikaze drones, will help as well.
Yeah, if they get them. Obviously, there's a lot of things Zelensky's asked for that they did not. Back to this issue of Russian morale and pressure on Vladimir Putin. Thousands of funerals certainly doesn't do much for Vladimir Putin, and people talk, even if they can't see it on Instagram or Facebook or the like. But there is this issue of these protests that have started, and there was the woman who held up the no war, no propaganda on Kremlin TV, Russian Channel 1. You've got these people holding up signs with nothing written on them as sort of this silent protest, if you will, to try to avoid arrest inside of Russia. Is there any chance you have some kind of ground swelling of opposition to Vladimir Putin from inside Russia?
I think it's very hard when people are facing the prospect of 15 years in jail just for coming out with an empty sign on a street. It's going to be very difficult to get any significant number of people to organize and to come out and face really tremendous disruption and ruining their lives. In fact, because the security services will be very, very fast at cramping down.
We were talking to Marnie earlier. I don't know if you heard the conversation about how we've only been able to read about Stalin's tactics, for example. We've only been able to watch in movies some of the things that we're now seeing play out in real time. I feel like when we watch this video of people being arrested and hauled off for 15 years in the Gulag, it's kind of like what Stalin did. We're just now seeing it on TV.
I think it's exactly what that was like, particularly in the early 1930s. Of course, we know what happened later in the late 1930s, where they were dragging these people and then randomly executing them in the gulags and in the prisons of the KGB. We're not yet there, but it's clearly heading that way. This is now a completely totalitarian regime that President Putin is running in Russia.
And it wouldn't be that far for him to go to executing people. It's not as though he has not done so in the past. Dimitri, great conversation as always. We really thank you for staying up with us.
Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.